Well, howdy ho there neighbors. Well, you've stumbled onto something awesome. The first of our lists here on history. The first list we're looking at today is selected one-hit wonders. That is, of course, single race winners in Formula One. Now, of course, note that some of these could still change, as racers that are still racing are included on this list. If you like what you see and you see what you like, hit that sub button, share the video, and come on, help us grow. You know the power is in your hands. But enough tomfoolery, let's get this started. In no definite order, let's look at some one-hit wonders. Joe Bonilla. Bonilla? Not sure. He had one race win in 108 races entered, 0 fastest laps, 1 podium. A Formula One career that stretched from 1956 to 1971. And then in 1959 in the Dutch Grand Prix, Mr. Bonilla got his only pole and he won from pole. His highest championship finish was an 8th place in that self-same 1959. He had a good time in 1959. In 1958 at Imola, his Maserati struck a huge ass rock at the edge of the road. Yes, there were rocks at the edge of the roads, and it flipped. Another driver went underneath him as he turned over and flipped in the air. And while he was upside down, get this, his crash helmet made contact with his competitor going underneath his crash helmet. Amazing. Bonilla was thrown out of the car and he suffered, get this, only a concussion, few cracked ribs and a broken vertebrae. It's amazing, this guy should have been dead. Never again in Formula One will we see things like these. Praise the Lord. His greatest achievement in Formula One was taking victory for BRM in that 1959 Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. He raced for several teams, mostly stuck in slow or unreliable cars, and he never really got another chance to get a victory. He was sadly killed in a crash in 1972's 24 Hours of Le Mans. His open-top Lola collided with a Ferrari and the car was catapulted over the Armco barriers into the trees next to the track, killing him instantly. According to Vic Elford, who was driving a Alfa Romeo in the same race, the last he had seen of Bonilla's Lola, it was spinning into the trees like a helicopter. My goodness. Sure, what a way to go. Lorenzo Bandini. Well, he started out racing motorcycles, graduated to Formula One later on. He had 1 win and 8 podiums in 47 races. His top finish was the 1964 championship when he finished 4th. Same year he also got his single race win in the Austrian Grand Prix. Bandini did not race bad cars. In 62 he was hired by Ferrari for 2 seasons. His debut at Ferrari, he finished 3rd at Monaco. That's pretty impressive. 63, he of course was his 2nd season at Ferrari, but he stayed only for the sports cars. Winning the Le Mans 24 Hours and placing 2nd in another big race, he occasionally raced in Formula One for the Scuderia Centro Sud team. Some good results convinced Enzo Ferrari to take him back into the Formula One team, which of course led to his famous victory at the Austrian Grand Prix in 64. He scored 2 more podiums that season. He was running 2nd at the Mexican Grand Prix, and he decided to let his teammate John Surtees pass him. What an amazing teammate, to enable John Surtees to become the world champion. 2 seasons later, 1966, Surtees left Ferrari mid-season and Bandini became the team leader. He was unlucky not to win in France and the US that year, when his car had mechanical problems when he was holding a huge lead. Next season, 1967, sadly at Monaco, Bandini lost control of his car, struck the straw safety bales. Wow, safety has improved a lot. Lining the harbour, and the car flipped over and ignited. Bandini was trapped inside. The car was burning, straw bales burning, so he suffered burns over 70% of his body, chest fractures, and a few days later he passed away at 31. Sad, sad story. And unfortunately not the only sad stories, these two on the list. Next up, Mr. Francois Cheval. 47 races, 13 podiums and a win. Magnificent. Only 4 years in Formula 1. He had a pretty solid career, finishing 22nd, 3rd, 6th and 4th in the championship before he too unfortunately suffered an early went to an early grave, aged just 29. As a teammate to Jackie Stewart, Cheval was under a lot of pressure for a lot of time. In 71, he finished second in France and Germany both times behind Stewart, and then at the season-ending US Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, the Frenchman earned his one and only GP win, having amazingly slid off, having hit a barrier, but getting back on the track for the win. He became only the second Frenchman to win a World Championship Grand Prix, and of course there were great expectations that were not fulfilled for him or Stewart in 72, with Cheval finishing in the points only 3 times. In 73 he finished second 6 times. Wow, unfortunate to only have the one victory, thrice behind Jackie Stewart. At Watkins Glen again, with Stewart already having clinched a 3rd World Championship, Cheval was killed in qualifying while battling for pole with Ronnie Peterson. Stewart said later they, them meaning the marshals, had left him in the car because he was so clearly dead. Stewart was heartbroken. He retired from the race before it started, and also from Formula 1 as the champion. Next up, Mr. Jorgen Mass. 114 Formula 1 Grand Prix, 1 win in 1975 in Spain. No poles, 8 podiums and a best of 6 in the championship. Unfortunately, Mass is mostly known for his blameless part in the death of the lightning quick Gilles Villeneuve, when Villeneuve in the 1982 qualifying session at Belgium collided with Mass, attempting to overtake him. Mass immediately stopped his car, jumped out and raced to Villeneuve, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. After leaving Formula 1, Mass had great success in sports cars. Of course, he had earlier won the 1972 World Sports Car Championship. His 75 Spanish Grand Prix win, but fortunate after race leader Ralf Stommen's car hit a barrier and exploded into flames, catapulting into the crowd and killing several spectators. The race was stopped. Mass was declared the winner in his McLaren. So, bittersweet victory. Now we're getting a bit more recent. Mr. Jean Alesi. Maybe someday soon we'll see his kid in Formula 1. 1 win in 202 races for Alesi. Wow, he deserved a lot more. Ferrari and defending champions Benetton were probably his best chances of winning, but he just couldn't get the amount of ability and luck together to pull off more than the 1 win in Montreal in 95. In 96 and 97 he finished 4th in the championship both years and scored a total of 32 podiums. Oh, so unfortunate. He made his name in the slow Tyrrell in the 80s and before long was courted by Ferrari. He joined them at a low point for the prancing horse, and despite some solid performances, the win on his 31st birthday was the only one he achieved. Swapping teams with champion Michael Schumacher in 96, he flattered to deceive, and it was all downhill afterwards at Sauber, Prost and Jordan, none which were top teams. Olivier Panis. How important that A in that surname is. 1 win and 5 podiums in 158 entries make Panis one of the most shocking winners on this list. Reaching F1 only at age 27 when he signed for Ligier in 94, he earned a surprise 2nd place that self-same season at Hockenheim. He proved very consistent, also getting 2nd in Australia in 95, in an improving but still some way off the top Ligier. He took a shock win in 96 in Monaco, Started 14th on a wet track, but there were incredible amounts of retirements in that race. Only 3 cars finishing the race. David Coulthard finished second in the McLaren, Johnny Herbert third. Panis held off Coulthard for the win. The race aimed at lap 75 of 78 due to the time limit being reached. Panis' victory was Ligier's first in 15 years and their last, and it was the first French victory in a French car at Monaco in 66 years. It was, however, his only highlight in 96, and his second best was 5th. 97 in Canada, he broke both his legs in a horrific accident. And 98 would prove a very difficult season as well, failing to score a single point for Prost. The rest of his career was blighted by inferior equipment. Next up, everybody's favorite Polish guy, Robert Kubica. Incredible that he only got the one win. Of course, the first Polish F1 driver, the first driver since Alex Wurz in 97 to finish on the podium within his first 3 F1 starts. Kubica performed well in 2007, finishing consistently in point-scoring positions. In Canada, he had a huge crash when his car clipped the barrier at 300 km an hour. He of course achieved his first and only F1 career win in the 2008 Canadian Grand Prix. He moved to Renault later on, but things didn't really work out that well. The company was in a bit of financial problems and there was Crashgate, talking about that in some other videos in the future. The team was sold to Genii Capital and Vitaly Petrov became his teammate. It was reported that Massa was under pressure at Ferrari and that Kubica would possibly replace him, but this never happened. And then in 2011 Kubica was injured in a horrific crash driving a rally car in the first stage of the Ronde Andorra rally. After lengthy operations to repair his leg, shoulder and arm, there was still some worry about him losing the hand, and he missed the entire 2011 season. He of course made the wonder comeback later on for Williams, but his hand was never really the same. And in an interview in 2018, Kubica revealed that he had actually had a contract to race for Ferrari in 2012. That's so sad. Pastor Maldonado. Well, we all know why he's on this list. The one win and the many crashes. While driving in Formula 1, Maldonado gained so many penalty points. He was leader of the most penalty points a couple of seasons. The most reprimanded driver in 2012, 5 points clear of the second placed guy, was Schumacher. Schumacher, my goodness, more reprimanded than Michael Schumacher. His reprimands ranged from speeding in the pit lane to causing collisions. His one and only win came for Williams in 2012 at the Spanish Grand Prix, where he qualified second. Impressive. And then of course he was promoted to pole when Lewis Hamilton, who had originally qualified first, was excluded due to insufficient fuel in his car. Maldonado went on to win the race, the first Venezuelan driver to win a GP. He remains the most recent Williams driver to win a race. 9 years already. During post-race celebrations, in a proper Maldonado move, fire engulfed the Williams pit, and Maldonado, the brave, was seen carrying his cousin to safety. He finished that season in 15th, the lowest championship standing for a driver winning a race in a season. He also received 14 penalties throughout the season, 5 ahead of anyone else. The rest of his career was basically a collection of okay performances and YouTubeable errors. Sergio Perez. Now here's a young man, well, not a young man anymore. Here's a Tom Cruise lookalike who of course could still escape this list. He got his break in 2011 in Australia, making his debut for Sauber. And get this, he finished 7th, but was disqualified for a rear wing infringement, which meant he became one of the very few drivers to be disqualified from their first Formula 1 race, along with Robert Kubica, Epi Vitis, Stefan Bellof and Mr. Martin Brundle. 2012 he had a good season, got 3 podiums in a Sauber. He moved to McLaren in 2013, replacing Lewis Hamilton. To give you an idea how highly rated he was, he had a torrid time though, and he couldn't finish higher than 5th and was sacked. Moving to Force India, scored his first podium since 2012 and 2014, but he was involved in a huge crash, which stuffed up his season. He had a couple of those, but he was solid overall at Force India. Few decent seasons he had. He even helped pay some of the Force India guys' salaries when they had trouble. The team was sold to Mr. Stroll, and of course, out of nowhere, in the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix, Sergio Perez drove the Racing Point to victory, which didn't save his job, and he was dropped at the end of the season for Mr. Vettel and Daddy's cash, and he was snapped up by Red Bull, where we hope he will get another few wins. Pierre Gasly, of course, another man who can escape this list. Got his break 2015 when signed as a reserve driver for Red Bull. He made his racing debut that season at the Malaysian Grand Prix for Toro Rosso, replacing Daniel Kvyat for a number of races. In 2018 he was a full-time Toro Rosso driver, getting some good qualifications and finishing in the points a couple of times. He was contracted to drive for the senior Red Bull team in 2019, partnering Max Verstappen. Following Ricciardo's departure to Renault, Gasly struggled with the Red Bull senior team, consistently off Verstappen's pace and getting lapped by him in several races. He was dropped back to Toro Rosso, with Albon taking his place before he himself was raced too hard. Gasly managed 4 top 10 places among his first 7 races the next season, showing a good amount of pace in his comeback season at Toro Rosso. And then with the 2020 Italian Grand Prix, an early pit stop allowed him to pass a lot of people. Hamilton boxed, had a penalty, Stroll went wide and off, and Gasly was in the lead. Carlos Sainz pushed so hard, but he couldn't get his first win, meaning that Pierre Gasly became the 109th different race winner in F1 and the first French driver to win a Grand Prix since Olivier Panis in 1996, 24 years earlier. Let's hope he too can escape this list. And of course, Mr. Jarno Trulli gets an honourable mention. Well, he deserves to be on the list. He's a one-time winner. He spent time at Minardi, Prost, Jordan, Renault, Toyota, Lotus. So many races. 252 starts, and only the one win. He often outperformed good teammates like Button, Beaton, Alonso, and who else, but he only got the one win. He was alongside Alonso, youngster in the Renault, and he was already an experienced driver. In the first part of the season, Alonso outperformed him heavily, but the next year Trulli improved a lot. In the first half of the season he was the better driver, racking up points and podiums like Monaco. He took his only victory. What a race to win. After a brilliant display, winning from pole, but it ended up being his only one. Unfortunately though, today he's best remembered for the Trulli train. What is the Trulli train? Let's ask Google what the Trulli train is. What is the Trulli train? Here it is. Jarno Trulli was perhaps one of the most underrated F1 drivers in recent history, who always outperformed, well, not always, sometimes outperformed a lesser car. He was known for his defensive driving style, which allowed him to successfully hold off quicker cars, sometimes for entire races, a combination being able to achieve a high grid position in slower cars, not letting others pass, would result in a line of vehicles forming behind him during a race, lovingly known as the Trulli train. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed our list. First of many, hopefully. If you haven't yet, hit that sub button, ring the bell, share the video, and be back, please. We aim to put out videos weekly, but we need you to watch them. God bless and goodbye.